Hey, Motorman here, and this week we're going to talk about high center of gravity and top-heavy motorcycles and all that other nonsense. Okay, ladies, I'm sure you noticed that these motorcycles have an extremely high center of gravity because the seat is 6 inches above the frame. Did you notice that high center of gravity?
What?
The center of gravity.
No.
You don't care nothing about that, do you?
No. Get
Why?
on and ride it.
Why do you not care about the center of gravity?
Because I know the technique to ride any motorcycle.
I know the 3 techniques.
That's it, folks.
Throttle, rear brake, turn your head nice.
That's it, folks. If you got the techniques, center of gravity means absolutely nothing. So quit the whining. All right, I'm always hearing people talk about high center of gravity and my bike is too high and it wants to tip over. And I say center of gravity means absolutely nothing if you know the proper techniques. These motorcycles, the rider is sitting about 6 inches above the frame. That means it should have an extremely high center of gravity and be quite difficult. But as you see, that's not the case. And the reason for that is they don't care anything about the center of gravity. It means nothing to them. They know the techniques. They know how to use that clutch and throttle. That's all it takes, folks. And I don't care what kind of bike you're riding, an adventure tourer, whatever it might be, those bikes are very high. But if you know the proper techniques, how to use your head and eyes, how to use especially the clutch and throttle, the friction zone, and put a little bit of pressure on the rear brake, you can handle any motorcycle with the ease of a child's toy, as you see these 2 young ladies doing. It looks pretty when you're doing it right. And what happens when you're not doing it right? Well, I'm going to show you. Now let's watch this rider. Now, he's been riding for many years, but his riding just consists of cruising down the road, making great big wide turns once in a while, and no leaning, turning, and swerving quickly. He has really no handle on the friction zone as of yet, and he gets into a turn, he pulls into the clutch, and the motorcycle tips over. No power to the rear wheel, down goes the motorcycle. That all has to do with clutch and throttle. The better you are with the friction zone, the clutch and throttle, the less fear of leaning the motorcycle you're going to have, and you'll realize that if you simply keep power going to the rear wheel, the motorcycle will stay up, as you saw with those ladies riding. Now let's watch him do the exact same thing once again. No power, down goes the motorcycle. Now here's a simple U-turn. Watch this rider. He's out of the friction zone. He's going too fast for his skill level to make that turn. Watch him do it again. This time he looks at the thing he doesn't want to hit, knocks over a couple of cones. Very common, also an experienced rider. Now this rider has got his clutch fully extended. He's not in the friction zone. He looks straight, runs over the cone. You look straight, you go straight. You're out of the friction zone, you're going to have problems. Now here we are about 3 hours or so into the class, and on what most people consider a difficult exercise, the snowman, a 30-foot circle to the left, 26 to the right, and 24 to the left. But now the riders are starting to get a good handle on the friction zone. It has nothing to do with the center of gravity. All two-wheeled vehicles, if you just let go of them at a standstill, they're going to tip over. They're all top-heavy in that respect. But if you learn to use the friction zone, it's nothing to it. I don't care what you're riding. You could ride any bike just as easily as another one. Now here's our rider on a BMW 1600, one of the bikes that I consider the most difficult to ride. He was in the class, I think, 2 weeks ago, and he did have some problems figuring out that friction zone. He got much better in this class. Not perfect yet, but much better. That is a bike with what many people consider a high center of gravity, but as I said, if you got a good handle on the clutch and throttle, a little bit of pressure on the rear brake, and you turn your head and eyes, it really doesn't matter. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. I always tell riders, if they practice prior to getting to the class, at least have a good handle on the friction zone. You'll be way ahead of the game. And here's such a rider. This rider practiced prior to getting to the class, has a very low fear level, and he also has motorcycle drop guards on his motorcycle. Yeah, you put those drop guards on, if you drop the motorcycle, nothing happens, so it takes that fear completely away. I'll put a link to motorcycle drop guards below, but this rider does a great job. He was good to begin with, and he was even better at the end. That's what this is all about, folks. Practicing and improving your skills. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. Here's our rider who initially had a real problem finding that friction zone. He was trying to ride, especially when you saw him doing the U-turn, with the clutch fully extended. Well, for his skill level, that meant the bike was going too fast for him to make the turns. And of course, he'd look at the things he didn't want to hit, such as the cones, and he'd hit them. Now, he's actually going around that last circle twice. He feels so good about it. And the rider on the Road King also had a problem going in and out of the friction zone. Sometimes he was in it, sometimes he wasn't. But he improved at least 200% by the end of the 4 hours. BMW riders now leaning the bike, staying in the friction zone, not going in and out of it. I believe he's using second gear here, which makes it much easier on motorcycles like this, the BMWs, or any motorcycle with a very sensitive throttle. You're better off using second gear than first. It allows you to slip the clutch a little bit easier. And that's what using the friction zone means. We're slipping the clutch. A little bit of pressure on the rear brake. You don't want to use the rear brake as a clutch, as a crutch. You want to use it as a little helper. When you get really good with the clutch and throttle, you can actually eliminate use of the rear brake. This rider still will go in and out of the friction zone, occasionally pull in that clutch, but improved at least 200%. And I think if he comes back in another couple of weeks, if he does any practicing on his own, he'll have it down pat. There was no quit in this guy. Dropped the bike several times, just got back on it and kept on going. As you can see, this rider, he's got the techniques down. Right in that sweet spot of the friction zone. His revs are perfect. Turns his head just as he should. There are 2 green cones in each one of the circles. As soon as you get within 6 or 7 feet of the green cone, you want to snap your head and look at the next one. Because since the bike is moving, you're covering ground as you're going, even at 10, 12 miles an hour that we're going here. Got to turn your head and eyes as quickly as you possibly can. I'd also like to see this rider come back in a couple of weeks, because towards the end of the class he was really getting it. Stayed in that friction zone. At first it was as if he had no clue what a friction zone was, but he got so much better towards the end. I was really proud of him. And he's not a young kid, he's probably in his 60s. So anybody that tells you you can't teach an old dog new tricks, of course you can. This isn't brain surgery, folks. We're just riding motorcycles the way they were designed to be ridden, and we don't care anything about top heavy or center of gravity or any of those other excuses. Till next time.